Welcome to the 2 Cents We See Scary Movies podcast. We're your go-to horror duo, breaking down scary flicks, diving into their twists and turns, and giving you all the commentary you didn't know you needed or wanted. I'm Talon, your lantern bearer in the darkest corners of horror, and with me is my co-host Dan, who's here to dissect every jump scare and plot twist like a kid in biology class on Frog Day. Together, we'll take you on a terrifying journey through the world of horror, one screen at a time. So before we dive in, here's a quick rundown of how this podcast works. Every month, we pick a theme and explore horror movies that fit that theme. This month's theme is pranks, and today's movie was chosen by Dan. So let's jump into this week's feature.
We typically, like the last podcast, we kind of broke it down scene by scene by scene. This time, we're not really going to do that because there's a lot of repetitiveness to the movie. So we're not going to break it down quite as detailed as we did with the last one. So just to give you a heads up on that one. But the movie is called June 9. It was made in 2008, has a runtime of 1 hour and 35 minutes, directed and written by Michael Conway, stars John Ray, Trevor Williams, Maggie Blasunas. IMDb gives it a solid 4.3 out of 10.
That's because it's a lie. It's not 1 hour and 35 minutes. It's 4 hours and 50 minutes.
Right. That's exactly how it felt. The movie is set in 1999. Quick synopsis, it's a bunch of kids who like to play pranks, and they go out to Boston Mills, Ohio, a few times, and where they kind of come into contact with these really creepy people. So from there, we'll kind of get more into the movie. It does start out with an old TV screen, just one of those really big box TVs with the screen's like really small, and it's got 2 dials.
Right.
One
Yeah.
for volume and one for volume and one for channels.
Yeah.
And kind of opens up by panning away from that, and it's showing a video that's kind of a combination of you seeing people getting chopped up and family home videos. It's kind of like mixed together. And the family home videos are depicting young children, probably 2 or 3 years old, just kind of running around a field or just standing around watching what's happening around them. And then it goes over to the kids, the leads of the movie. And they're your typical teenage kids. They're playing pranks and jokes. It being 1999, it's well before YouTube and all of that stuff. So all they have is their video recorder, and they're only showing themselves, I'm assuming, and then like maybe some friends. So they don't have the national audience that people have now.
Right.
You have John Ray, who plays Robert Burrows. Trevor Williams plays Derek Bogman. Maggie Blasunas plays Jennifer Naughton. Alasha Wright plays Lisa Bogman. Chad Vincent plays Alan Bertie Alberts. And Mike Bryson plays Cello. And Malone Shaw plays Hobart. Although I don't think Hobart was part of the kid.
The kid? Yeah, I don't remember any of them.
Yeah.
And when you were saying their names, I realized, 2 of them are related.
Right. So, I mostly remember the names of Lisa, Cello, and Jennifer.
Right.
Jennifer and Lisa because they're the only 2, females in the group. And they say Lisa's name enough when he's upset. And then Cello because he's the obligatory, fat guy that they make fun of.
I thought he was Bertie. That's Bertie. Albert Bertie. Bertie's the one that I remember, whose name I remember the most. The kid with the glasses.
Okay.
Little chunky kid with the glasses. Yeah, that was Bertie.
Yeah. Okay.
Cello was...
I knew.
I think Cello was not the really obnoxious guy. The one that drove the van. Was that Cello?
Possibly.
Like I said, I don't remember who's who.
Yeah, I just remember the kid that I'm thinking of had a weird name, so that's why I'm just thinking Cello.
Was Cello the kid? Well, hold on. We'll
honestly, Cello could have been one of the Puritans that we're going to get into a little bit later.
But I feel like Cello might have been the kid in the fancy car. Remember that scene? Okay. That I thought, is that kid ever going to shut up? Because they meet up with him after their first visit to Helltown.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you remember that, you may have like. I wouldn't blame you if you did.
Right. All right, so now that we've got the characters like kind of straight.
That's how good this movie was.
Right. So, they're playing their pranks and everything, and they hear a rumor that there's like weed in this field that they want to go to. So they end up making a road trip, and, I believe they're also set in Ohio because it's some distance away, but it's not like a terrible far distance.
I would hope not, as much as they go there.
So they go to this town, and they find the field that they're supposed to go to, which is pretty decent considering that all they have is a map. They don't have MapQuest or anything like that
Right.
at that
Yeah.
time. Or MapQuest was like in its infancy.
Yeah.
They find the field and they're still playing pranks and gags on each other, and nothing really worth noting. Just the typical stupid crap, hitting each other with a baseball bat, like a fake baseball bat. Or one scene later on, guy grabs the girl's, chest,
Right.
that kind of stuff. And so they come across a dead cow. They're kind of hyper focused on it for a bit. They're just talking about how disgusting it is, how gross it is. And so they walk down this field, probably like 25, 30 feet, and they come across a couple who is having sex just randomly. So they get pissed. Like the couple gets pissed because they see like all these kids around them and stuff. And so the kids start like running off to their van, and the couple kind of chases after them. Now, my whole thing about that particular scene, how many people would have sex next to a dead cow? I mean,
Stinky, yucky, gross. How's this so romantic?
I mean, and the thing is, it was still rotting. Like, it wasn't like it was a skeleton. It still had like rotting meat on it. So that it was gross smelling. And not to mention like the flies and the maggots. Granted, they did have like the covers on. I mean, they had a blanket underneath them, a blanket over them, up to the girl's shoulder.
Right, all the way.
So,
you couldn't see anything with their heads.
So maybe that was to get the flies away from them. But still, I understand sometimes people have that urge and they have that passion to get it on. But I don't think I could ever bring myself to have sex beside a dead cow, even if it's like 20 feet away. I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, that's the smell alone, I think, and the bugs, that would be awful. And then they had to have passed it. It's not like they did it before the cow. They were beyond the cow.
It was well beyond the cow to say, I didn't see it. You had to walk past it. I mean, that was part of the walking trail.
Right, that's how the kids got to them. It was they had to pass the cow, right?
The only explanation that could happen is that they didn't see it, is that they came from the other way, which would not have been a good thing for them.
No, they would have to come through like there were woods or something out that way. It would have been a weird way. It wouldn't have been from the road.
And that would have been near the commune we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
So none of that made sense, but let's just throw in the obligatory sex.
Yeah. Right. Where can we place this sex scene? Oh, right here by this dead cow is great.
Right. Yeah. So the kids, they end up in a different part of the field and they find their pot plants and, they're looking at it as they end up walking away from it. And this is the only time you see or have any reference to the pot plants.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The whole reason why they go to Boston Mills, Ohio is to find these pot plants, and then you never see them again, despite how many times they go back.
Right. And they see that guy, and the guy, he tells them to get the heck out of there. He was really nice about it. He was calm. He
was respectful.
Yeah. The lady who owned the land doesn't really want you here. So, and they acted like they were lost a dog, and they are calling the dog's name. But then after that scene, they go back home and they go to this place where all these like souped up cars are. And this one guy shows up and they're like, oh, let's go talk to him. And so the one kid goes and gets in his car with him. He's in there forever with this guy, and he's telling him about the pot plants. So the guy's like, yeah, bring me somewhere. But then that kid went on and talked to him. He's the one that told them about the weirdness of Boston Mills, and he's the one that told this kid that they call it Helltown for a reason. And then he went into all these stories, but it was really long. I was like, oh my God, just shut up and get out of the car. Because by that time, I mean, it got dark. It was pouring down rain. I mean,
Yep.
It was a really long time. So I thought the reason why they were going back the next day was to get the pot plants. Never heard about the pot plants again.
Never went back for the pot plants. Oh.
Yeah, that was weird. I was like, okay.
So that whole scene happens with the guy. So they go back home. And again, it shows them playing their pranks like the next day. Is that when they ended up at the diner? Yeah, I think the next day.
It's really hard to... It's really hard to keep up when literally for like 4 or 5 days, it was basically the same thing over and over and over.
Right.
So it's hard to remember which one was which and what timeline,
and the thing is, we would have watched this movie a second time to kind of get some of these details out, but we
Couldn't do it.
The thing is that we don't talk about these movies before the podcast because we want everything to be flowing in a natural conversation about it.
Right.
This one, I just made the comment of I'm 4 hours into an hour and 15-minute movie. And Talon had said something in return about it. Oh my God, I agree. So that's the only thing that we really talked about before the podcast.
And I couldn't even watch it in one sitting because it made me nauseous. Not the gruesomeness of it, but the jerky camera motions gave me motion sickness. So I only watched the first 50, I think it was 58 minutes maybe or something like that. And then I had to watch the rest the next day because it was making me so sick. But yeah.
And for me, there were certain parts I disassociated over because it just took so long to get to where it needed to be.
Yeah, you get zoned out kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the repetition of the same thing. You go over like a 5-day period.
Right.
They're playing their pranks. They go to this town. They get in trouble. They come back. They play their pranks. And it just rinse and repeat. And then it doesn't really start getting anywhere until towards the end.
Yeah. Did you happen to notice what day they started on? Because it was like the old VHS recording type thing where you could see the date in the corner. And I remember specifically seeing June 8th and thinking, thank God it's June 8th. We're almost finished. Hallelujah. But because it goes on to months after that. But I didn't look to see when it started. I don't know if it was like the 5th, the 6th, maybe. Maybe the 6th.
I think it was the 4th.
Oh, the 4th. Oh shit.
Yeah, I think it started on the 4th.
Good God.
Because that's what I remember seeing is June 4th.
Well, you know what? It had to be because they went back there so many times. Like they went back during the day, they went back during the night. Yeah. And so, it probably was the 4th because they had gone back a lot. Even though I know we talked about how long it felt. And part of me was like, well, I kind of see what they're doing. They're trying to slowly build up this tension where every day a little more of something would happen. But it was nothing a little more that was interesting. It was nothing. It was nothing a little more that really got you. It was just the same shit. It'd go somewhere. You'd think something would happen, but then nothing happened.
Right, or something very, very minor would take place, like get off our land.
Right.
So from here, we'll just talk about the prominent scenes wherever they may lie in the movie. So that at one point they end up at a diner.
In the diner scene, they went in and they sat down at the counter and they were talking to the lady that was working behind the counter, and they were acting like they had a school paper they had to write. We're just trying to get information on Boston Mills, and they kind of asked normal questions like, when was the town established? Everybody in the diner that was sitting there was fine with talking about it. But then one of them brought up all the weird things that happened, and then they all got really quiet and were like, oh, that's why you're here. And then somebody said, yeah, like you're writing a paper for school when school's out, it's June. And they got really defensive, but quiet. Like they just shut down and stopped talking about it and told them that they needed to go. They needed to leave. So they did.
So they end up leaving the diner and they start driving down the road and they end up at a stoplight and they see a couple walking towards them. And the girl looks at them and is like, oh my God, it's you guys. And she lunges at them, reaching in, and there's a guy with her that's yelling at them. And it turned out that it was the people that they interrupted having sex.
Those were the people that they were in the field?
Yeah.
I did not realize that. I was wondering why these people were so pissed at them. I'm like, what the fuck? Why are these people so mad? Like, where'd they come from that they are suddenly so pissed? Although, honestly, if I got caught having sex in a field and I ran into the same people, I'd be laughing. I wouldn't be pissed. Like, or I want to beat them up.
I mean, it ends up being a funny story, really.
Right.
I mean, I'd probably be pissed at the moment, but after like a day or two, I probably would have a funny story out of it.
Like I wouldn't because they took off. They started chasing their car on foot. Like they're running after the car. And I'm like, really?
Sprinting. Like these like duffel bags and back stuff on them.
Right. Now that I realize, because I was wondering, like, what do they do? These people are trying to chase them down. But now, okay, I get now because so there's also the people, because there was a scene outside the diner at another time or whatever, because there was another couple that were riding around in a van and they were constantly parked somewhere in town, and they were always the kids were always finding them and bugging the fuck out of them. They tried to spray paint their van and they were trying to open the door while they were in there having sex. And there was a scene where, and I don't know, they didn't really say that these kids caused them to have a flat tire, but they had a flat tire. So they called over some people, and it was that lady of that couple. She saw the kids in their van. She was like, "Oh, it's you." And I'm like, what the fuck is it with this woman? Why is she so mad at them? Like, where did they even get into them? I didn't even know.
And that's the thing about this movie too, is there's so much that is like not explained.
Right.
And certain things are introduced and there's no explanation for them whatsoever. One of the first things that they tell you when you're writing a story is that if you're going to introduce something, you're going to have to use it at some point.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of ideas that are thrown into this movie, and it's like, where does it go? Because it doesn't go.
No, it goes nowhere. From the pot to the people, like, well, I guess if you catch on, like I didn't see the people long enough, I guess, who were having sex to recognize them as the people walking down the street.
Right.
But so I guess if you catch that, but still, it was so, I don't know, I feel like that whole sex scene that was so quick.
And completely out of place.
Yeah, it just did not register with me at all that those are the same people. And I just thought they were just people that were somehow pissed at them. I didn't know why. So,
because it really does feel like T. Michael Conway, the writer director here, he just threw like a bunch of spaghetti on the wall and everything stuck. So it's like, hey, let's do that.
Right. Yeah. Good idea.
So they end up back at the little commune, and I think this is where they started to explore a little bit more. They start going through this workshop that they have, and you start seeing all these religious figures, kind of like it resembled Mother Mary. There's like a ton of them, so it looks like it may have been the workshop that they sold these things out of.
Right.
I think they also had a bunch of wicker baskets, just all kinds of like little trinkets like that.
Yeah.
One of them ends up getting into the house, and there's a set of twins. Right. They were twins, right?
They looked like twins. I mean, you only got to really see them through the window.
Right.
And the window had lace shears, and they would just stand there because they kept knocking on the door, and they wouldn't move. They'd just stand there listening to music, but just standing still.
Right.
But they looked like twins. I don't know, though.
And so one of the kids ends up getting into that house, and he goes upstairs, and he ends up hearing a noise or something. He ends up in the closet hiding, and the little girl comes in and sees him. And then you hear one of the guys downstairs saying, one of them's in the house.
Right.
And the kid who's in the closet, he ends up seeing like a bunch of pictures of them and the things that they were doing and stuff like that. So they end up getting seen.
I feel like that was a weirdly disjointed thing. Again, something that he just kind of threw in there. Because when the kid was in the closet, and you could tell he's terrified, you can hear him the way he's breathing and stuff. And he leaves the closet door slightly open, which stupid. I don't know why. Like, if you're going to hide in the closet, shut the fucking door. But he has the camera, of course. So, and when he turns and he looks at the back wall of the camera and he sees all those pictures of them doing all this stuff in town, it just seemed like that was out of nowhere. Like, there was nothing in any part of this movie that was indicative that somebody was where they were all the time and taking pictures of them in some kind, like, not that you have to show someone who's doing it, but I guess because it's first person, you can't really show it where it looks like somebody's watching. I don't know.
Right.
But it just seemed like it was just out of nowhere. Like, oh, let's make this creepy and have pictures of them on the closet wall. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only way they could have pulled that off is if when they're playing their pranks or whatever,
right,
there's someone down the street, just barely visible, and they have a camera themselves.
Right.
And even still, I mean, we're talking like, what was it, Polaroids?
Right.
You have to kind of be like right on top of someone for a Polaroid to look good.
You can hear it.
Right.
Those are kind of loud.
So yeah, another one of those spaghetti stuck to the wall moments.
Yeah, it was weird.
They all end up like running for their lives to the van. They end up seeing that the van has, was it two or three red marks painted on the side of their van?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it reminded me of the crosses that were in the town.
Right.
Because they had a whole bunch of crosses in the town that it was like a cross, but it had two extra things going across. It wasn't just like one down and one across. It was one down and three across. And that reminded me of that.
And they were like usually at a slant or an angle. There was like a lot of like symbolism like that throughout. Like they constantly showed like whenever they went into this town that they drive by like this main cross thing that they had. It's kind of shown throughout the movie. So, they end up leaving. after a bit, they're freaking out, and then they're just kind of laughing at their fear and everything. All this stuff is increasingly happening, and they go back at night, and they're walking through the field, and they get to the wooded area, and Lisa has the camera, and she starts freaking out because she thinks she can see somebody. And when she zooms in, it's just like a white blob. When she zooms out, it kind of has like a silhouette of a person, but you really can't tell. All the while, you can see somebody else in front of them, but they're not referencing that person.
Yeah.
At all. Like they could see him like right in front of them, but they're not referencing him. They're not talking to him. He's just not there.
And they don't understand why she's freaking out also.
Right, exactly.
You don't see this person that's right in front of you.
So she's constantly freaking out. She ends up taking a couple steps forward, and then you see that it's a woman, and it's a creepy depiction because she's hunched over. She's got the reflection in her eyes, so it gives this green flow, and then it pans over. Now you see the other guy, and he's got his green eyes, and then they take off running.
Right.
And so they get back into their van. And that was the other thing about the movie, too. Like another one of those ideas that just never stuck is there was a supernatural component that they never, ever, ever referenced or explored outside of the physical of what was happening. Like Lisa would constantly get sick.
Yeah. Nosebleeds, throwing up, feeling like crap or whatever. Yeah. She was whiny. Yeah.
It looked like stomach cramps. And then the video camera would just go snowy for a second, or it would kind of glitch for a second.
Yeah.
Kind of indicating that, something weird is going on. And it would happen whether someone was one of these Puritan type people were near them, talking to them, or if they were kind of like approaching them without being seen.
Yeah. But it definitely gave off this whole supernatural kind of effect, but then there was no supernatural anything. There was nothing.
No, not at all. And I really think this movie would have been better if they explored that.
Yeah. Or at least pick one thing and go with it.
Right,
but,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think this movie would have been solid if it was something like this town only exists every 100 years or so, and like the people are actually like demons or ghosts or something.
Yeah.
Kind of like something from the 2001 Maniacs with Robin Englund.
Especially because it also felt like anytime you'd see that weird camera thing going on or something, that's when Lisa would get sick in some way. Like it would affect her. Like she was having some sort of empathetic reaction to what you would think would be some sort of supernatural force. Either that or she's just a whiny, sickly girl. I don't know. Because there was no supernatural anything. So it was like, what is she getting sick from? Why is her nose bleeding? Like when her nose was bleeding, it was like she had her hand over her face and it was just pouring out.
Yeah.
So it was pretty severe.
That's probably where the budget for the movie went, was her nosebleeds.
But yeah, they were all over the place in this movie. And then not anywhere at the same time.
They leave again. One last time, they go back.
June 9th. Thank God.
June 9th. We're at June 9th. And so they go back, and this is when, the shit hits the fan. They get captured, and they end up getting murdered. Although the murder scenes were pretty laughable, because one of the kids, they had him on his knees, and they hit him in the head 3 times with this really tiny, I would say like a cobbler hammer, like something for shoes. And they knocked him 3 times, and he's dead.
They barely hit, like they had the big mallet too. But even with the big mallet or the little, they barely hit them.
Right.
Yeah, there was no force whatsoever.
And, we understand that it's a movie and they want to be safe and everything, but 9 times out of 10, they're using foam.
Right.
And I have a feeling that Spirit Halloween wasn't open at that time and they couldn't afford to make a foam one, so they used real ones.
Right.
And they couldn't use them to make it look realistic. And so they just gently tap Lisa. She's got this big red spot on her head. She falls over and she dies.
Right.
And the kid that they tapped in the forehead with the hammer, he's miraculously still alive. And it's more towards nighttime because it kind of jumped really fast from like day to night. And so they end up getting killed. And at this point, commune that they infiltrated has their camera. So they have it set up at Lisa's and I think it was John's death, because they were kind of close to each other. Then you see it at night and John's still alive. He's coughing, but barely can move. And so a guy comes over, puts his neck, and, he's gone. I honestly don't remember what happened to the others.
I don't remember either, because I was saying, do I remember Birdie's? But no, I don't remember. Because they had split up when they left to go to this town, and they didn't explain that either. They didn't explain why they went in different vehicles. They had never gone into town in different vehicles before. They'd always gone in the one kid's van. And this time, the guy and the girl that were dating, they went in her mom's car, I guess. Then the other three kids were in their van behind them, and they take off and they're going to Boston Mills. And somehow, I guess they were going too fast. The boyfriend and the girlfriend were driving too fast, and they were like, hey, where'd you guys go? Because they had walkie-talkies. Oh, that was the other thing. The walkie-talkies. Because remember, every once in a while, there'd be like a little kid would come across the walkie-talkie and say something weird.
Yeah.
Also made it seem like there was some kind of weird spirit, supernatural thing. But anyway, so they were like, what are you guys doing? Why are you guys going so fast? We lost you. And they never answered back. And then they're like, they must have turned this way somehow. They knew which way they turned. And they turned down this road. They're driving through this field. They get to behind a barn or a building of some sort, and they see the car. They're like, oh, they're here, but the doors were wide open. And then the next thing you know, people show up around their van, and they bust open the windows, and they're pulling them out. Those three, which were the one kid who was not the super obnoxious cool kid, Birdie, and Lisa. I don't remember at all what the heck happened, how they killed Birdie or the other boy, but Lisa I remember, and then the really obnoxious kid I remember, but I don't remember what they did to the girlfriend either.
Jennifer. I don't know what happened with Jennifer either.
Don't remember at all. It's like, it's just a complete, like I blocked it out. Like, I don't know.
They end up showing the aftermath and taking off their clothes, and you see them kind of like processing the bodies. It kind of shows families, the little kids watching what's going on. Some of them are upset and they're being consoled by their mother, and we're there, we're at the end, the credits start rolling, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden it keeps going. There's more. Now,
we're not there with you.
This honestly was probably the creepiest part of the movie, and the part that I thought was actually really decent.
Yeah, I liked this part, and I don't know if I liked it because of the way it was shot and what was going on, or because I knew it was almost over, whatever. But I did feel like this was probably the best part of the whole movie.
So it's after like these kids are killed, their bodies are processed, stripped of all their belongings, and they're having like a community picnic, and everybody's just there talking as if nothing was wrong.
Right.
Talking about sports or what they do for work or how the family's doing. Like, it's just a regular conversation, and nobody is, perturbed by what happened.
Right.
Throughout the rest of this scene, it kind of like jumps a month or 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Because they still have the video camera. They show someone walking into the workshop and just giving a woman a bag of stuff. And they're like, yeah, we got more for you. And she's like, thank you, dumps it out. It's all the kids' clothes and belongings.
Right.
And so they start processing it. And I'm assuming some of it goes into their shop. And then you see like some of it gets dispersed amongst the commune.
Right.
And then it jumps forward from there. And it's a kid in the car, and it's a family thing.
Yeah.
And again, everybody's sweet, nice as pie. Like, everything's great. And so little kid, like the mother's, well, you chose this, so you can't use this.
Right. He had chosen the video camera.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of like telling us that they have a choice of what they get. That's that.
Right. And then they also show the one scene that I thought, I kind of liked was the cars. When they showed all the cars, like there were tons and tons of cars out in this field, and a lot of them were old. So this has been going on for a long time, because a lot of the cars were old cars, like look like cars from maybe the, 50s and 60s and stuff. So which made you feel like they've been doing this for a while. And I know you keep calling it a commune, but I really never thought of it as a commune. I just thought it was like just the town. Like the town, these people lived in this town, and they were very old-fashioned-y. They dressed kind of properly, almost like 1940s, maybe 1950s. The men would wear those kind of hats from that time, and they had the white shirts, and they had the nice dress pants and dress shoes, and some of them would have bow ties, and some would have suspenders on. The women all wore dresses, mainly. The little kids were all in nice, almost like they were wearing their Sunday best on Easter or something like that. That's how they seem to dress all the time. It had a very older, like 1950s kind of feel to me. I feel like the whole town was like that, but not like it was a small group of people outside, like within the town that was doing this. It was the entire town that was doing this. So to me, it didn't seem like a commune as much as it just felt like this was a weird town. Like these people were weird.
Yeah, so you come across those cars because the kid is looking for what I would assume is his dog. He keeps calling him Rusty. We can only assume that dog was real because then the camera shows these pails, these buckets, and they walk over, and there's like bloody meat, like pulverized into this thing, and it's basically saying that this is what happens to the kids,
right? Because they had been cutting them all up. Yeah.
Right. And you kind of assume the way they're doing it is that they're cannibals. And that's the part that I thought was kind of cool as far as like how they were being portrayed, because I was watching a movie not too long ago it's the sequel to a movie called Butchers, which I liked the first one. The second one wasn't all that great, but it's about some cannibals, and they always look like dingy and dirty and grimy, psychopathic, like abusive.
Weird. Yeah, like the Hills Have Eyes kind of people, like they're deformed in some way.
And that's kind of like how they're always presented. But if you think about it in real life, if you see we've probably walked past several serial killers, murderers.
Yeah.
People do horrific things, but we don't know it because they're acting like average, normal, everyday people, whatever that means to you, so you wouldn't expect that coming from certain people. And that's what this is. You wouldn't expect these people to be the way they are based on how they interact with each other.
Yeah, they seem very normal.
And so there's a guy that picks up the buckets and walks over, and you think that it was going to be like, but nope, it's to slop the pigs.
Right. And as soon as I saw that, because they had a ton of pigs, they had so many pigs all crammed into this pen. And I thought, why did they even bother grinding them up into mush? The pigs would have just eaten them whole, especially this many pigs. Yeah, they didn't need to go all that trouble.
And honestly, there's better ways to feed your pigs.
Right.
Especially if you're in a town. The only reason why I call it a commune is just because of like the family dinner and like all that other stuff.
Right.
In the place that they're at, there's plenty of farmland. There's plenty of places to grow corn and tomatoes and like whatever else that you would feed pigs, grain. Yeah. There's plenty of space for it. There's plenty of people for it.
Well, I'm assuming that they were probably feeding them to their pigs just to get rid of any evidence of them. But again,
that would make sense.
But again, it's like, why grind them up into nothing, into this sloppy mush? You could just throw their bodies in there.
Then the end is like the beginning. It shows that old TV, and it shows basically the same thing that they were watching earlier, which was the bodies being processed, like a hand being cut, little kids running around.
Right.
But this time, the camera switches to a person, like a younger guy, who's watching the whole video on TV, and then that's where it ends. And then that's where the final credits show, and then you can actually turn it off.
And that guy too, I was hoping it was going to be somebody. I liked that that's what they did with it, but I was like, who is this person? Who's this guy? It wasn't anybody that I remembered in the movie. Nothing.
I thought that it may have been connected to somebody else in the movie, but I didn't want to go back. I didn't care enough.
No, didn't care enough. Was not invested enough to figure out who this guy was. Yeah.
I just saw the credits. I'm like, okay, we're done. We are done.
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't
finally
anything else after this.
Yeah, it was I don't know. I felt like I was hopeful once I got to the point where I was like, okay, maybe they're just trying to do this slow build and it will get to something really good. So I had some hope there for a minute, if that long. And of course it didn't pan out. And again, I did like the scenes that ran through the credits much better, more than the actual movie itself. Because, well, one thing is I didn't like the kids.
Yeah. There was nothing redeeming about them.
I didn't care. I didn't care at all if these kids lived or died. I was almost like, yes, just because maybe it'll be over now. But yeah, there was nothing about them that made me care. Because a lot of times you'll watch a movie, and when you're watching movies like that, or anything where it's a suspense thriller, and you're rooting for someone, always, usually. But I wasn't rooting for anybody in this movie at all. Except for maybe, I did kind of like Birdie a little bit. I think maybe because he was like the odd man out. I always kind of like the underdog. But
Yeah.
still, like there wasn't anything major about his character, nothing developmentally that made me still give a shit if he lived or died. It's unfortunate he picked the wrong friends, I guess, but
Right.
basically what it came down to. But I will say that even though the movie wasn't great, I do feel like the actors, the kids who played the kids, did a good job acting. I thought
Yeah, he did.
they did a good job. Like them being scared, like especially when the kid was in the closet, like I could tell he was scared. And it was probably the only moment in the movie where I felt some tension or a little anxiety, nothing major, but it had something. But I felt like they did a good job in terms of acting. They did really well with that. But
Yeah.
they can only do so much, I suppose, with what they've got.
And that's the thing. There was a couple shining moments in the movie. Kids acting, they did a good job. I mean, I used to be a fan of pro wrestling. You know, for wrestlers, you either get cheered or you get booed.
Right.
That's the response that you want. You don't
Right.
want to have violence because then you're not doing your job. These kids, even though they're not likable and there's nothing redeeming about them, they did a good job making that happen.
When they were
You know,
scared, you could tell they felt you felt like they were scared. It wasn't
Right.
like, because when it first started, I was worried that this was going to be a real low budget, like some kids got together and made a home movie to look like a found footage movie. So I was like, ugh. Because sometimes when you get those like that, I never watch those. I'll start and I'm like, if they look awkward, they're standing awkwardly, they don't know what to do with their body because they're not actors, they're just pretending to be actors. They're acting
Right.
like actors. I don't know. It's like there's just this awkwardness and it's so uncomfortable to watch. And I was worried that's what this was going to be. But it turned out, acting wise, no, it was fine. They did a good job. And it didn't have that weird homemade, a bunch of kids just got together and made a movie kind of thing. It was obviously professionally done to some extent. There was some sort of professionalism to it. So that is one redeeming quality of the movie.
And then the other part is what we talked about as far as the group of people, just how they made it creepy with them not like reacting to these
Right.
kids' deaths as if it was like they just slaughtered chickens to them.
Right.
You know, and that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I didn't care that the kids died
No.
because it kind of reminds you of like the pranksters that are on YouTube right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, I don't want to see those kids die or anything like that, but like
Right.
watching a movie and you're kind of going through the fantasy of it, it's like, hey, you know, it would be really cool if that was Jake Paul. I don't really wish harm on the guy, and I think this would be a good point to say this podcast does not support murder of any kind, but it's
Whenever
just
you're watching, like there's times where you're watching a TV show or a movie and there's a bad guy and you're like, oh my God, just kill him already.
right.
I mean, in real life, I wouldn't be like that, but on a TV show or a movie, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's all pretend, it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was House on Haunted Hill. Oh no, House of Wax, thousands of years ago when they did the remake and Paris Hilton.
Uh-huh.
Like, I loved the scene when she was killed off. It's like, you know, that's
Right.
like the best part of the movie because at that time you either loved her or hated her.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and you know, to see her character get called off, it's like, yes. But now, to give some fairness, from what I understand, is she's become quite the philanthropist, and you know, she's got a lot of good organizations going on. I got to give some respect for that.
Right. Yeah. People can grow. People can grow.
They can.
So did you do any background on this story at all?
I did not. I just kind of was traumatized from the movie, and I spoke about it in my therapy session today. So yeah, so there's some trauma there. So I didn't really go back and look at anything.
You don't want to revisit. Okay, well, there is some background on this movie as to why it was made. So the story takes place in and around this creepy abandoned area that has some real life ties to urban legend. So the movie it's based on Boston Mills, or as it's better known as Helltown, which is in Summit County, Ohio. And this is a real place. So Helltown is also surrounded by all this sorts of folklore, stories about abandoned buildings, ghost sightings, and even rumors of satanic rituals, which after I read this, because I didn't read this until after I watched the movie, I thought, oh, maybe that's what that was about. Like all that stuff they were doing. Maybe there's some just satanic ritualist stuff. But again, they really didn't get into it. It's like they took all of this stuff and put it all together and hoped it would work, and it didn't. But anyway.
It definitely would have been a better story.
Yeah. So the history behind it is actually back in the 1970s, the U.S. government evacuated the area to create what's now the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. They bought out a bunch of homes, left a lot of the structures deserted, and they're still there. Like they're just in the park standing there, but deserted. And of course, this led to all kinds of myths and urban legends and people talking about stuff. So there are tales of hauntings, mysterious creatures, and unexplained phenomenon that supposedly still happens in the area. I guess that's why there were so many different things in this movie. Like they had the things that made it seem like there was some kind of supernatural thing going on. But then, of course, they had the people in the town who killed other people. And I feel like I don't think they just went out of their way to kill people. I think that whenever everybody in that town is probably generation after generation after generation of families that have all lived in this town. They don't move and they don't like outsiders coming there to either. Like you can pass through to drive through to get to the next town, but don't stop and hang out in our town. Don't come back every day 2 or 3 times a day
Right.
and do a bunch of dumb shit, and don't move here either. I feel like if you do that, then that's where they come in and they kill you and grind you up into pig slop, and then steal your stuff and maybe sell it or keep it or whatever they do with it. But it's like they took the satanic part, which I think maybe that was trying to be satanic, even though they didn't seem like your quote unquote how it, satanic people are ritualistic things are put in movies.
Right, how they're depicted.
Right. And they didn't have any weird creatures. They didn't have any of that. I don't remember seeing any weird creatures except for maybe the dead cow, but that wasn't a weird creature. And even the part where there was that one scene where, because they were always daring each other to do stuff. Like I triple dog dare you, to go do this, or I triple dog dare you to go do that. And they dared, was it Jennifer, the blonde girl? Not the one that threw up all the time, the other girl.
Jennifer.
Yeah, her boyfriend triple dared her to go. There was like this bus out in the field and it was dark, and he triple dared her to go and sit on the last seat of the bus for like 7 seconds or something. So she walks up with the flashlight and the camera, and as she gets close to it, she sees something and she starts freaking out. And then and you get this glimpse, and it looks like a kid in the bus, and he's standing there. So she freaks out and she drops the camera and runs back to the car. It almost looked like it could have been a ghostly kid, but I think it was actually one of the kids. And then, of course, her boyfriend's all pissed off because she left his camera there. So he had to go back and get the camera, and he saw nothing. So it made it seem ghostly, but I think it was actually one of the kids. But yeah. I don't know. It's like they tried to take all of the stuff that's in the legend and the lore and put it all together in one movie and didn't flush it out so that like they needed to focus on one thing, and they didn't do that because it was just all over the place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing that I did kind of see that it annoyed me, but I also understood that they were trying to do something with it. Whenever the kids were at home, the video was pristine. It had the right coloring.
Oh, yeah.
1990, like whatever technology was back then, you're not going to get the best quality.
Right.
Everything looks quote unquote normal in the camera. But whenever they went to Boston Mills, except for the nighttime shots, there's always this really strong yellow, orangish hue.
Yeah.
That kind of plagued everything.
Yeah, they made it really sharp looking.
And so I understand that they were trying to make it the juxtaposition between their normal life and then them going over to this town, kind of giving it like its own like feel.
Right.
The washout was just too much. You know, it was just too yellow, and it was kind of hard to pay attention to because it was just so bright feeling.
Yeah, it was a little too much. And it's funny because you're talking about how the technology and stuff. I did, oddly enough, watching it, I got used to it, and it seemed like at first it seems like that weird graininess, but it's weird how you get used to it and you don't even realize it anymore, because I did get used to the fact that it was grainy and a little off, but I got used to that part of it. But yeah, that really stark contrast when every time they go into town where it would be this weird color. I think that eventually got used to that too, I think, because I only remember that like in the beginning really being like, oof. And then I think I got used to it, or I was just zoning out. I don't know. Was there anything else? It was good when it ended. That's about all I can think of.
Yes. It was good when it was ended. The pigs were slopped and they were happy.
Yep. They're all happy. If we rate this, and since we're the 2 cents We See Scary Movie podcast, we'll give it between 1 and 10 cents, 10 cents being good, great, and 1 being awful. How many cents would you give this movie?
I would give it 2.5 cents.
2.5 cents. Yeah, I'd say that I would give that 2.5 cents as well. And that's mainly just for the ending and the acting.
Yes.
I think the kids did acting, storyline, everything else, how long it seemed to take for anything to happen. Yeah, it definitely loses a lot of sense. It makes no sense. Probably the better way to put it.
That's why I said early on that IMDb gave a very generous 4.3 or 4.5, whatever it was. It was very generous.
Yeah, it was all the people who were in the movie. They went and rated it. I can't imagine anybody giving that a good rating.
No, not at all.
So next week for our movie, I am picking. So I picked The Burning, which is an old 1981 movie. I looked at a bunch of different movies to try to figure out what I want to do. But this one I think it takes place in a campground. I can't remember if this one was like a prank had happened years and years ago and they were coming back for revenge, or if there was a prank that happened during the time they were there and so it was getting revenge. I can't remember which one it was. But so if anybody wants to join us, go ahead and watch The Burning. So you'll know what we're talking about next week. And that can be watched on Tubi. But if there's nothing else you need to add about this wonderful movie that we watched this week.
It's done.
I'm just glad it's done. All right. Well, you and we survived the 2 Cents We See Scary Movies podcast. Thanks for listening. And remember, be scared, be prepared, and don't get caught in the dark.